Consequently, that is the overall concept. As you can see, the fiscal terms are targeted well below the current rather tough terms in Kenya, in Mozambique, in Tanzania, and consequently what we try to do is we realize that Somalia is now a frontier area. Of course, in the other three countries, large resources have already been discovered, largely gas resources. We hope it will be oil in Somalia. However, we need to realize that we are a frontier area compared to the other three areas, and consequently we try to attract investment by offering actually more attractive terms. Of course, we did an overall worldwide analysis comparing the terms with other bid rounds, other countries that have been having bid rounds over the last few years. Lebanon had a successful bid round, we looked at that. Indonesia had a very unsuccessful bid round, and that was also a very important benchmark for us. So we know what worked, we know what didn't work over the last 2-3 years, and consequently that is how we designed the terms. We designed the terms in a modest way so that if the field is bigger, the oil price is higher, and the costs are less, that Somalia gets more. So that means the government take is progressive. That means the more attractive resource, the more Somalia will get in terms of fiscal revenues. That also means the less attractive resource, the less Somalia will get. So consequently, we try to design a fiscal system that applies to a wide range of conditions. Here you see the so-called government take for a number of countries. The big red line are the terms in Somalia. What you see here is the government take in percent, as you can see, and here you see field sizes from 20 million, that will be a challenge, all the way up to 2 billion. And what you can see, the share that Somalia will get will gradually go up as the fields become bigger and bigger. So that is the overall design. As you can see, the terms are far more attractive than the current producing East African countries. For instance, here is the government take of Mozambique, for instance, and we are well below Mozambique, and Mozambique is actually the most favorable term in East Africa. So consequently, there you see very competitive. We looked at, as I said, we looked at Lebanon. We are very competitive with Lebanon. We're well below Indonesia. Indonesia had a failed bid round, so we like to make sure that we're well below those terms. We are kind of equal, as you can see, to the more moderate terms in Ghana. So this is the overall government take. This is the undiscounted government take, as it is called. Of course, for investors, it is not just the government take that is important. What counts is the profitability. What counts is the risk of profitability. So what we do, or what I do in my firm, I also rate the fiscal systems. My firm actually regularly rates all the fiscal systems in the world, from the most attractive to a government which is number 1 to the least attractive, that is number 100. And then we actually classify more than 768 fiscal systems in this world. I rate Somalia, the terms, the minimum terms that are being offered, as rating 58 out of 100. So a little bit tougher than the average of the 50. So consequently, as you can see, these African terms are rated far tougher. I also listed some other, the US, Gulf of Mexico, of course, list more attractive. So here you see the overall rating of Somalia. In the Van Moers rating, I rated 58 out of 100. How did we balance the fiscal terms? We talked about the overall level, the overall burden. How did we spread this burden? What you're going to find very attractive in the terms from an investor point of view, contrary to almost most African nations, in the very first bid round, we won't have a carried interest for the national oil company, despite the fact that the legislation provides for the possibility of a national oil company. So we have no carried interest. That is always quite a headache sometimes, having a carried partner with no money, and consequently you will not be faced with that burden. Somalia realizes that really they need to collect revenues, substantial revenues first, before they can play themselves in the oil business. Another very attractive feature of the terms is that production sharing is very attractive, very modest compared to most countries in the world. Where the system is a little bit on the tougher side is where it really counts for Somalia. Royalties are substantive, and then training obligations are very substantive, and social obligations. As we heard, Somalia is just starting out, and if oil and gas is found, the training requirements are immense, and consequently we have put great emphasis on training obligations. So there is also substantive administration fees compared to some other nations, because Somalia has, at this point in time, not the funds really to administer otherwise a very large offshore. We realize that it may take 10 years before you actually start to see production. And in that 10-year period, Somalia has to have the funds to properly administer the exploration and the possible development of the various oil fields. Let's look a little bit at the details. There will be signature bonuses. $2 million is contemplated. There may be a higher bonus for some of the better fields. The training obligations, as I said, are $500,000 per year, and the same is for social obligations. That will, as soon as the first discoveries are made, will put Somalia in a strong position to start training their people for the oil industry. The royalties are based on sliding scales, based on the daily production, and based on price. That means, as I already showed, the bigger the field, the royalty is done on a field-by-field basis. The bigger the field, the more royalties you pay. The smaller the field, the less royalties you pay. And that makes a wide range of fields economic. Here you see the range. The royalty ranges from 20,000 barrels a day to 200,000 barrels a day. It moves between 5% to 20%. Then there is, on top of that, a royalty based on price between 40 and 110, which moves from 0 to 50. You have to add the two numbers together. So if the oil price is $40 a barrel, and you find a very small field, what are you in for? 5% royalty. That's it. That is very favorable compared to the royalties you pay in most other countries in the world. If it is a huge field and the oil price is $110 a barrel, then you're in for the 75% royalty. So consequently, the royalty automatically slides with those conditions. We realize that gas has to have far more attractive terms than oil, because gas, particularly these days, gas will be difficult to sell as LNG. Many of the East African countries have seen big problems trying to sell their LNG. And consequently, if gas is being found, the fiscal terms have to be more attractive than for oil to create the possibility of LNG projects. And consequently, that is also part of the puzzle. As you can see, the rates for gas are less than for oil. The As you can see, the corporate income tax is 30%. The corporate income tax floats with the generally applicable but non-discriminatory rates. Then we get to the truly attractive part. For oil and gas, the cost limit is 70%. That is somewhat on the high side these days for very attractive areas. But then the profit oil share to government is from 10 to 30%. So that, based on an R factor, as you can see, that is a very attractive production sharing arrangement. Now, it is precisely this 10 to 30% that will be the only bid variable. So, as Engineer Carrar already explained, we want to have a very transparent bid process. And that means whoever bids the highest increase to the 10 to 30% range is the winner. That's it. You sign the contract that has been discussed for 5 months with the various oil companies, and then the winner will get the block. It is that simple, a very simple bid system. The R factor ranges from 1 to 3 based on cumulative inflows for the contractor relative to cumulative outflows. What does it mean in real terms? Now, as I said, the larger the field and the higher the price, and the lower the cost with the R factor, the total government take goes up. However, Somalia has shied away from this typical creeping off of profits. We realize that if you go to a frontier area, there has to be upside. There has to be upside, otherwise, why bother? And consequently, that is what we offer in the overall terms. That is what you see actually here. This is how the pie is divided, how the oil is split in terms of cost and profit. If you have a small field, 200 million barrels actually in many parts of the world wouldn't be called a small field, but I understand that in Somalia there are even bigger opportunities than that. And if the oil price is $60 and the cost of $20, now the oil company picks up 29% of the total barrel, and here is the split from the government. If the field is large and the cost is much lower and the price is much higher, as you see, the share of the government, the share of the contractor still goes up. The percentage of the contractor still goes up. That means there is upside. And that is a very important part of the design of the fiscal system. We know that the most attractive aspect of Somalia, after you have reviewed the geology, will be the possible upside that this country can deliver. Not too many countries around the world offer attractive upside anymore. Somalia will do that. So consequently, that is what you see here. Somalia realizes that fiscal stability is important. Somalia has honored their deals from the past and consequently intends to honor the deals in the future. And consequently, we have a fiscal stability provision in the agreement, as Engineer Carrar indicated, for a period of about from today really until September. Everybody can comment on the model contract, provided you pay your participation fee first of $50,000, but then you can speak and then you can comment to the government. And so what we like to do is for the next months engage with the possible investors to hear the reactions on the contract, to see how we can improve it, to see where there are contradictions that need to be resolved until we have a perfect contract that we think includes all of the concern, and then we will freeze it and then we go for the bids. And if you win, that's the contract you sign. a very, very transparent system. So there are certain small, generally applicable taxes, like property taxes and so on, which are relatively minor. What we propose is, provided nobody tries to put discriminatory taxes on you, but we propose that these small taxes are simply payable as they will appear from time to time. As I said, we have the single bid parameter, a very transparent bid process compared to most nations in the world, and consequently, if you like what you see in the geology, if you believe there is good geology, and if you make a good bid and you win, you can sign this contract, and consequently you will be certain of getting the block. There will be all kinds of negotiations afterwards. If you are the winner, you are the winner, and consequently that is the bid process. With that, we hope that we offer not just good geology, but also good terms, and it is always the combination of good geology and good terms that attracts the investors. We hope to do that, and consequently we like to listen to you over the next 7 months and see your comments on the terms, and then the terms will be finalized, and then we are ready for bids. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I would say, just to remind you that after the next presentation there will be a chance for questions and answers, and if you have any specific questions to ask at that time, it would, if you just hold on to or frame those questions just for a minute, and then we'll go forth in the Q&A. So thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Looks like we have a license round in Somalia. We have a chance to an opportunity to access acreage that has never been accessed before. And it looks like if we are going to invest